Before entering tonight's story, take a moment to notice something quietly true. Perhaps you have spent the entire day trying very hard to control yourself, trying to focus more, trying to be stronger, trying to let go of worry, and sometimes even trying to sleep. Yet the more you try, the tighter the mind becomes. The more you give commands, the more slowly the body responds. This is the gentle paradox that this video wishes to touch. In modern science, willpower is no longer understood simply as force or self-coercion. Through the lens of Carl Gustav Jung and contemporary neuroscience, willpower is a subtle relationship between consciousness and the unconscious, between attention and permission, between what we try to control and what the body already knows how to do on its own. When this is understood, strength no longer comes from tension, it arises from deep internal cooperation. Welcome to Stories for Sleep, a YouTube channel for stories that explore the human mind in a gentle, profound, and safe way before sleep. Nothing here asks you to remember or to strive. All that is required is listening. Tonight, allow willpower to rest and let the body softly whisper back its natural rhythm. There is a familiar paradox that many of us experience, especially at night. The more we want to sleep, the farther sleep seems to drift away. The more we try to let go of thoughts, the louder the mind becomes. We are often taught that willpower means pushing forward, controlling ourselves, overcoming limits. But what if that very effort is what prevents the body from resting? This video begins with a very gentle yet profound question. What is willpower really? From the perspective of Carl Gustav Jung and modern science, willpower is not merely problematic, conscious effort. It is a delicate relationship between the parts of us we know and the parts we do not. The mind does not stand apart from the body, and the body is not a machine waiting for commands. They are in constant conversation through hormones, breath sensations of safety or threat, even when you are not aware of it. Tonight's journey explores quiet truths that belief can alter physiology, that attention can amplify or soothe pain, and that sometimes the strongest form of will lies not in control, but in permission. This is not a story about becoming stronger. It is an invitation to slow down and listen to how the mind and body already know how to self-regulate. This video does not ask you to remember information or achieve anything. Its value lies in experience, the feeling of being understood, of being safe, of being allowed to soften within a deeper order. As you continue listening, you may notice that willpower does not need to strain to prove its strength. It can be gentle, flexible, and still deep enough to carry you through tension and fatigue and quietly guide you into sleep. If you are here, perhaps a part of you is already ready to stop trying. And that is exactly where this story begins. When the mind touches the body, when speaking about the relationship between mind and body, modern humans often carry an unspoken assumption that these are two separate entities. The mind is where we think, worry, imagine. The body is where we move, ache, grow tired. But then night arrives when you lie still in the darkness, the body exhausted, while the mind refuses to sleep, and that assumption begins to fracture. In that moment, an ancient yet ever-relevant question quietly emerges. Is the mind truly separate from the body? This opening does not begin with a grand declaration, but with a subtle shift in perspective. The familiar phrase, mind over matter, has long been misunderstood as encouragement to push harder to conquer the body. Yet in neuroscience, physiology, and depth psychology, it means something very different. The mind does not stand above the body, it permeates it, and the body is not passive. It continuously responds, adjusts, negotiates with the mind using ancient languages, hormones, heart rhythm, breath, sensations of safety or threat. What was once dismissed as imagination, belief, expectation, attention, is now measurable, seen on fMRI scans as brain regions lighting up or quieting down, detected in the blood as cortisol, oxytocin, endorphins, transmitted through neural signals so quickly that before you can name an emotion, your heart has already shifted, your stomach has tightened, or your entire body has softened for reasons you cannot quite explain. These are no longer metaphors. They are living biology. When a person believes they are safe, the body enters a state of repair. When a person feels threatened, even if the threat exists only in thought, the body responds as if it were real. This is not a flaw of the body, nor a weakness of the mind. It is how the body-mind system evolved to survive. Here, the boundary between mind and body becomes so thin that it nearly disappears. From a Jungian perspective, conscious awareness is only a small part of the psyche. Most of what governs your responses, tension, relaxation, sleepiness, alertness, operates at deeper levels, where the personal and collective unconscious are active. The body is one of the primary gateways through which the unconscious enters conscious life. A sudden ache with no clear cause, a breath that grows shallow without warning, a heaviness in the chest when thinking about tomorrow. These are all forms of language. This introduction is not meant to explain you through theory, but to reassure you with a gentle truth. You are not broken, you are not weak, and you do not need to fix yourself right now. Difficulty, sleeping, fatigue, tension, these are not failures of willpower. They are signs that your body-mind system is trying to protect you in the only way it knows how. And sometimes what it needs most is not command but listening. When the mind touches the body, it does not create instant miracles. It creates small changes, a slightly longer breath, a warmth spreading softly in the chest, a pause between two thoughts. Yet when these small changes are allowed to exist, they open the door to another state. One science calls physiological safety, and Jung might call a temporary harmony between consciousness and the unconscious. This video is designed to guide you toward that state, slowly, without force, without effort. You do not need to believe anything right away. You only need to allow yourself to be here listening and to notice that even now as you read or hear these words, your mind has already begun touching your body in a different way, softer, slower, and less demanding. And as that boundary fades, sleep, which never comes from command, may begin to find its way back. As we touch, this understanding that mind and body are not separate, that every thought leaves a biological trace, a deeper doorway opens. If the mind can influence hormones, heart rhythm, sensation of pain, then a natural question arises: are the things we see, hear, and feel truly the world as it is? Or are they a version the mind has prepared for us? Carl Gustav Jung once wrote simply, yet profoundly, in Psychological Types, what we see depends mainly on what we look for. We do not look at the world with empty eyes. We look through memory, belief, past experience, and fears that have never been named. And from here we arrive at an understanding that may gently soothe your tired mind tonight. Perception is not a mirror. Placebo and nocebo when meaning becomes biology. For decades, placebo was dismissed as a fake effect, something unreal, an illusion of belief, a distortion to be eliminated from scientific research. But as brain imaging, hormone measurement, and neural monitoring became more refined, science was forced to face a gentle and profound truth. The body does not clearly distinguish between belief and chemistry. When a person believes they are being healed, the brain does not remain an observer. It participates. It activates endogenous pain relief systems, endorphins, enkephalins. It adjusts heart rate and blood pressure. It alters immune responses. It softens or amplifies pain signals. Not because the body is tricked, but because meaning has become biology. When you take a pill believing it will reduce pain, your body begins producing the very substances that such a medication would typically trigger. Studies show that if the endorphin system is blocked, the placebo effect diminishes as well. This means belief does not stand outside the body. It moves directly into physiological systems. Carl Jung wrote in The Symbolic Life, "The symbol is the word or image that best describes a complex of facts that cannot be reduced to a single concept. Placebo is a living symbol, not the pill itself, but the entire field of meaning surrounding it. One deeply important and humane insight from placebo research is this: healing is not only contained in chemicals, it also lives in how we are treated. The same treatment, when accompanied by listening, gentle explanation, and a sense of safety, can produce markedly different biological outcomes. This does not weaken science, it completes it. Jung emphasized in Modern Man in Search of a Soul, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Care is not merely an action. It is a meeting that transforms. But if positive belief can soothe the body, the opposite is also true, and this is especially important for sleep. Nocebo occurs when negative words, harmful expectations, or vague fear create real symptoms. Not because the person is weak, but because the brain is doing its job protecting. When the brain believes there is danger, it increases vigilance. It amplifies sensation. It tightens the body. Pain appears. Nausea appears. Fatigue appears. Not imagined, but generated through meaning assigned to bodily signals. In Jungian psychology, the body is not merely biological. It is a language of the unconscious. Symptoms are sometimes the unconscious speaking what consciousness has not yet heard. Jung wrote in The Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious, the body is the instrument of the psyche. This does not mean that all illness is psychological. It means that psychology is always part of how the body responds. When we live in prolonged fear, the body learns tension. When we live in safety, the body learns release. The most important message of this section, and one especially suited for listening before sleep, is this: you do not need to eliminate every uncomfortable sensation immediately. You only need to change how you are with it. Pain may decrease, not because it disappears, but because the brain no longer interprets it as a threat. A racing heart may settle when it is no longer framed as danger, not through force, but through permission. Many people struggle with sleep not because the body does not know how to sleep, but because the mind continuously sends nocebo signals. If I don't sleep, tomorrow will be terrible. I'm not sleeping again. Something is wrong with my body. These familiar thoughts act as small doses of nocebo to the nervous system. By contrast, even a single different message can shift the rhythm. I don't need to do anything. My body knows how to rest. Lying here is enough. The body begins to change pace. Placebo and nocebo do not teach us how to control the body. They teach something gentler. The meaning we live with each day quietly shapes our biology. And tonight you do not need to create new meaning. You only need to choose one that feels safe, that you are being listened to, that you do not need to try, and that your body has known how to rest for a very long time. When we understand that meaning can become biology, that belief travels directly into hormones, heart rate, and the nervous system, one of the most familiar human experiences comes into new light. Pain. Not abstract pain, but real pain, in the body, in the flesh, in each breath. And just like placebo and nocebo, pain is not merely something that happens to us. It is something whose intensity is decided by the brain. Pain of volume, controlled by the brain. For a long time, pain was believed to be a direct signal from damaged tissue. Greater injury, greater pain. Pain as an objective measure of danger. Modern neuroscience has gently revised that story. Pain is not a measure of damage. Pain is a protective decision made by the brain. The brain functions like a gatekeeper. It constantly asks, does this level of threat need to be felt clearly? The answer depends not only on tissue but on context, meaning, memory, and safety. The brain does not have an on-off switch for pain. It has a volume knob. At times, the same bodily signal is amplified intensely. At other times, it is turned down so low that it is barely noticed. What determines this? Not just injury, but are you safe? Do you feel in control? Does this sensation signal danger? One classic example comes from the battlefield. Some soldiers suffer severe injuries, yet report little or no pain at the time. Not because they are stronger, but because the brain is prioritizing survival. Pain is temporarily muted. When safety returns, the volume gradually increases again. This shows that pain is always contextual. In chronic pain, the opposite can occur. Tissue may heal, yet pain remains. Not because the body is malfunctioning, but because the brain has learned that the area is still dangerous. Excessive attention, fear repeated, checking each reinforces the message. Yes, this is something to watch. And the volume stays high. When safety increases through explanation, reassurance, and a sense of control, the brain begins to lower the volume. Placebo does not erase injury. Hypnosis does not deny sensation. They change meaning. And when meaning changes, protective decisions change as well. Carl Jung wrote in Psychological Types, "The psyche creates reality every day. Pain, in many cases, is part of a reality created as protection." Two factors raise pain volume most quickly: fear and excessive attention. Fear tells the brain danger. Constant monitoring tells the brain, this is important. The volume rises not to punish, but to force awareness. From a Jungian perspective, pain is not only physiological, it reflects the relationship between consciousness and the unconscious. Jung wrote in The Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. Not because pain is good, but because it often appears when something needs to be recognized, adjusted, or allowed. When consciousness tries to control too much, the unconscious may speak through the body. Many people go to bed fearing sensation, fast heartbeats, muscle tension, mild headaches, feelings that something is not right. That fear itself turns the volume up. But even a small shift in message can change everything. My body is protecting me. I don't need to fight this sensation. Nothing needs to be solved right now. The volume begins to fall. Not because you forced it, but because the brain no longer feels the need to shout. Pain is not an enemy. It is an over-concerned guardian. And like all guardians, when reassured that everything is okay, it lowers its voice. Tonight you do not need to turn pain off. You do not need to fully understand it. You only need to let the body know we are safe. And in that safety, the brain will adjust gently, slowly, and softly enough for sleep to arrive. As we begin to see pain not as an enemy, but as a protective decision of the brain, a wider picture emerges. Because the brain does not work alone. Every adjustment it makes draws the entire body into participation. And within that larger picture, there is one quiet yet powerful force influencing every system within us: stress. Stress immunity, and the body-mind stress, is not merely an emotion. It is a comprehensive physiological state. When stress becomes prolonged, the body does not simply feel tired. It shifts into a different operating mode, a state of vigilance. In this state, all systems are prioritized for short-term survival. Under the influence of chronic stress, the body begins making very specific decisions. The immune system becomes dysregulated, not because it weakens entirely, but because its rhythm becomes distorted, sometimes overreacting, responding at the wrong time. Inflammation increases, like a small flame kept constantly burning, not large enough to end things quickly, but sufficient to slowly wear the body down. Wounds heal more slowly, because in a state of vigilance, the body does not prioritize repair. It prioritizes readiness for the next threat. The body is not doing something wrong. It is simply doing what it believes is necessary. From a Jungian perspective, the mind and the body have never been separate entities. Carl Jung wrote in Modern Man in Search of a Soul, "The psyche and the body are not two separate things, but one and the same life." Psychological stress does not merely affect the body, it is a bodily expression. When the mind perceives threat, the body immediately joins the story. What is remarkable is this: the body does not need many reasons to begin recovering. It needs only one clear signal: we are safe. That signal can come from very simple things. Relaxation, not through effort, but through allowing the body to release vigilance. Social connection, a familiar voice, a warm presence, or simply the feeling of being understood. A sense of safety. Not absolute safety, but safety sufficient that the body no longer needs constant defense. When these signals appear, the body begins to shift modes. In a state of safety, the parasympathetic nervous system activates. This is when immune rhythms begin to rebalance. Inflammation starts to settle. Repair processes are prioritized. Energy is redirected toward rest and regeneration. No commands are issued. No force is applied. The body already knows what to do when it no longer feels pressured to stay alert. Many people try to force sleep while their entire system remains in a stress response. The brain scans for danger. The body holds energy in reserve. The immune system hovers between defense and exhaustion. And then we ask, why can't I sleep? The answer is often very gentle. The body has not yet received a signal of safety. Not because you did something wrong, but because the system is designed to prioritize survival. Jung did not believe in forcing the mind to be positive. He believed in listening. In The Structure and Dynamics of the Psyche, he wrote, "What we do not make conscious appears in our lives as fate. When stress is not listened to, it moves into the body. When the body is listened to, it begins to let go." Tonight, you do not need to heal your immune system. You do not need to reduce inflammation. You do not need to do anything more. You only need to offer the body a very simple message. There is nothing to fight right now. I can rest for a moment. And in that moment, the body begins doing what it has always known how to do, shift into recovery mode. Slowly, quietly, and gently enough for sleep to arrive. When the body begins to believe that there is nothing it needs to defend against right now, it does not require logic or explanation. It needs only a signal clear enough to confirm we can let go. And among all the signals a human being can send to themselves, there is one path that is shortest, quietest, and most reliable: the breath. Breathe. The vagus nerve and regulation breathing is a strange thing. It happens automatically, yet it is one of the very few biological functions we can gently touch with awareness. You cannot command your heart to stop beating. You cannot instruct your digestion to speed up or slow down at will. You cannot directly tell your immune system to relax, but you can slow your breath, and that changes everything. When breathing becomes slow, deep, and steady, the body does not interpret this as a technique. It interprets it as a survival message. There is no immediate danger. We do not need to prepare to fight or flee. At that moment, the parasympathetic nervous system activates. This system is responsible for rest, digestion, recovery, and sleep, not through force, but by reading signals from the breath. The vagus nerve is one of the most important communication pathways between the brain and the body. It runs from the brain down to the heart, the lungs, the stomach, the intestines, and many other internal organs. When breathing slows, especially when the exhale becomes longer than the inhale, the vagus nerve receives a signal, safe, and it begins to work. Heart rate softens, blood pressure gently lowers, the gut relaxes, emotions are no longer pushed upward. The entire system shifts from vigilance to care. It is important to emphasize this: breathing is not a tool to control the body. It is a way of reminding the body of its natural state. Carl Gustav Jung wrote in Psychological Types, "We do not solve our problems, we outgrow them." The body is the same. It does not need to be fixed. It needs to be placed in the right conditions to self-regulate. Breath is that condition. Many strong emotions persist not because of their meaning, but because of the physiological rhythm accompanying them. Anxiety often comes with rapid breathing. Tension comes with breath holding. Fear comes with shallow breathing. When breathing changes, emotions do not disappear instantly, but they lose fuel. They are no longer reinforced, and slowly they cool down on their own. In this exploration of will, this is a crucial point. Will is not always effort. Sometimes the deepest will is knowing when not to interfere. In The Structure and Dynamics of the Psyche, Jung wrote, The unconscious is not something evil by nature. It is simply something unknown. The body is the same. When we allow the breath to slow, we are not controlling the body, we are trusting its unconscious intelligence. Sleep does not come from effort. It comes from conditions. Slow breathing is not meant to make you sleep. It sends only one simple message: you may stop. There is nothing more to do. And when that message is clear enough, the body will do the rest. Right now, you do not need to change your breathing. Just know this: each time your exhale becomes slightly longer, you are whispering to your body, "I am safe." And the body, deeply loyal, will listen. When breathing has slowed, not because you forced it, but because the body has begun to believe there is nothing it needs to defend against, another subtle change occurs. Not loudly, not suddenly. It is the quality of attention. You no longer have to track every thought. You are no longer pulled by every small sensation. Attention begins to stay, not clinging but not drifting either. And this is where meditation, focus, and brain plasticity begin to meet. Meditation focus and neuroplasticity. Meditation is not about emptying the mind. Mindfulness is not about pushing thoughts away. Hypnosis is not about losing control. At their deepest level, all of these are simply shifts in how attention is held. Not more attention, not tighter focus, but gentler attention. Modern neuroscience has shown something essential: the brain does not change well under force. It changes through repetition in safety. Meditation, mindfulness, and hypnosis do not fix the brain. They create an environment in which the brain can relearn, learning not to react immediately, learning to stay with sensation, learning to observe without judgment. This is neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself based on repeated experience. We often confuse focus with tension, but in meditation, true focus is remarkably soft. It is like placing your hand on water without disturbing the surface. You know you are paying attention, but you do not need to grip. When attention has this quality, brain networks associated with anxiety, rumination, excessive emotional reactivity begin to settle, not because they are pushed away, but because they are no longer fed. One of the most important changes meditation brings is the ability to observe emotions without becoming identified with them. Emotions still arise, thoughts still appear, but there is a small distance enough not to be swept away. Carl Gustav Jung wrote in 2 essays on analytical psychology, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Meditation does not eliminate the unconscious. It simply shines a very gentle light, allowing you to notice, oh, this is an emotion, oh, this is a thought, and that recognition alone changes how the brain responds. Hypnosis, properly understood, is not a state of being controlled. It is deep focus within safety, like listening to a bedtime story so absorbed that the outer world fades, yet you remain entirely yourself. In this state, the brain becomes more receptive to new patterns because defensive systems have softened. This is why hypnosis can reduce pain, reduce anxiety, change habits, not through force, but through permission. One important point for sleep: the brain does not need you to understand everything. It does not need you to do it perfectly. It needs repeated experience. Each time you return to the breath, each time you notice a thought and let it pass, each time you stay with sensation without resistance, the brain registers. This way is safe. This does not lead to danger. And gradually it chooses that way more often. In the exploration of will, meditation offers a beautiful paradox. The strongest will is not forcing the mind into silence, but allowing noise without interference. Jung emphasized that inner development comes not from control, but from dialogue with what is present. Meditation is such a dialogue, wordless, without argument. Sleep does not require you to focus correctly. It only requires the brain to stop treating every thought as urgent. Meditation and mindfulness are not meant to put you to sleep immediately. They do one very simple thing. They reduce the seriousness of experience. When everything feels less serious, the body allows itself to rest. Right now, you do not need to meditate correctly. You do not need better focus. Just know this. Each time you notice that you are thinking, and do not criticize yourself for it, the brain learns something new. And the brain, when allowed to learn in safety, will find its own way into sleep. As attention softens, as you no longer need to hold the mind at any particular point, a very natural human capacity begins to emerge. Not logical thinking, not analysis, but imagination. It does not appear as a task. It arrives like childhood daydreaming images, drifting sensations leading with no demand to do it right. In this state, the brain does not clearly distinguish between what is happening and what is being imagined. And it is precisely here that the body begins to listen to the mind in a very deep way. Imagination and the body. We are often taught that imagination is not real, that it is daydreaming, something that exists only in the mind. But neuroscience and depth psychology as well have revealed a very different truth. Imagination is not false. When you imagine a movement, the brain regions that control movement are activated. When you imagine a sensation, the sensory areas of the brain respond. The brain does not require the outside world to initiate a response. It needs only meaning. In many studies, athletes who trained only through imagination were still able to improve strength, increase accuracy, reduce reaction time, even though their bodies barely moved. Because to the brain, imagination is a form of neural rehearsal. It is as if the brain tries out scenarios in advance, so that when the body actually acts, everything already feels familiar. But what matters most for sleep is this. The body also rehearses safety in the same way. When you imagine a quiet place, a familiar space, a feeling of being supported, your heart rate may slow, your breath may deepen, your muscles may soften, not because you are pretending, but because the brain does not need to distinguish between real and imagined in order to relax. It needs only the signal, there is no threat here. Carl Gustav Jung did not see imagination as an escape from reality. He saw it as the natural language of the unconscious. In The Transcendent Function, Jung wrote, "The unconscious can make its contents known only through symbols. Imagination is how those symbols appear. You do not need to analyze them. You do not need to control them. You only need to allow images to come and go. There are things the body does not respond to through logic, but responds to very quickly through images. You may tell yourself, it's okay, and yet the body remains tense. But simply imagining a warm sensation, a safe space, a slow rhythm, and the body understands immediately. Because the body reads symbols, not arguments. What matters is this: imagination is not drifting unconsciously. It is not worry. It is not rumination. Imagination, in a relaxed state, is a form of regulated activation, enough to engage the brain, not enough to trigger defense. This is why bedtime stories, slow imagery, gentle metaphors have such deep effects. Within the theme of the power of will, imagination reveals an important truth. Will is not only effort. Will is also choosing which images you allow yourself to remain with. You do not need to use willpower to force the body to sleep. You only need to allow an image that feels safe enough for the body to let go. Sleep does not come from commands. It comes from context. When imagination creates the right context, the body understands on its own that it is time to rest. You do not need complex imagery. You do not need vivid scenes. Only a slow rhythm, a soft space, a familiar feeling. The brain will do the rest. Right now, you do not need to imagine correctly. You do not need clear images. Just let images come and go like clouds drifting. Your body has known how to listen to images for a very long time. And as imagination softens, the body softens with it. When imagination has settled, when images are no longer forced to be clear, you may begin to notice something very subtle. Your body does not exist only where it is lying. It exists in the brain, not as flesh, not as bones or muscles, but as a living map, constantly updated, constantly adjusted, and sometimes trapped in old lines. And it is here that the story of chronic pain begins. The body map and chronic pain. We often think that pain lives where the injury is, but neuroscience has revealed a gentler and deeper truth. Pain lives in the brain, not only in the body. This does not mean pain is imagined, quite the opposite. It means pain is a neural experience with biological meaning. One of the most striking phenomena in science is phantom limb pain. A person loses an arm, yet still feels itching, contraction, sharp pain, even severe pain in the arm that no longer exists. Not because they imagine it, but because in their brain, the map of the arm is still intact. The brain does not know the limb is gone. It only knows. This part was once very important to protect, and so it continues to send signals. In your brain there is an area called the somatosensory cortex. There the entire body is drawn, not according to physical size, but according to survival importance. Hands, lips, face very large, back, thighs smaller. This map is not fixed. It changes with experience, injury, attention, fear, emotional memory. Chronic pain often occurs when the map becomes stuck in alarm mode. One of the gentlest therapies ever developed is mirror therapy. A mirror is placed so that the reflection of a healthy limb appears as if the missing limb is still there. The person simply looks. No medication, no invasive intervention, and something remarkable happens. Pain decreases. Contraction softens. The feeling of being stuck dissolves because the brain updates the map. It receives a new message. Everything is okay. Today, virtual reality VR is used to treat chronic pain, support injury, recovery, assist PTSD treatment, not by distraction, but by creating new sensory experiences. The brain does not clearly distinguish between real and deeply experienced. When experience changes, the map changes, and when the map changes, pain can soften. Carl Gustav Jung did not see pain as purely physiological. He saw it as a message from the unconscious. In Modern Man in Search of a Soul, Jung wrote, "The body is often the unconscious made visible." Chronic pain in this sense is not only unhealed tissue, it can be a memory not yet integrated, a conflict not yet acknowledged, a part of the self stuck in the past. The brain is designed to protect, not to make you happy. If it once learned this sensation equals danger, it will continue to send signals even when the threat has passed. Chronic pain is rarely your fault. It is the sign of a system too loyal to its protective role. Pain and insomnia form a familiar loop. Pain, tension, tension, sleeplessness. Sleeplessness, heightened pain sensitivity. But when you understand that pain is a map, not a punishment, the body begins to soften. No fighting, no winning, only allowing the map to be redrawn slowly. Right now, you do not need to fix your body. Just know this, your body is being redrawn by the brain moment by moment, and that map can change. If earlier we saw that pain does not live only in tissue, but in the brain's map of the body, then the next gentle question is, what allows that map to change? Not willpower, not force, not enduring, but safety. The brain follows a very ancient rule. When danger, keep old strategies. When safe, allow relearning. In stress, the brain does not learn, it repeats. That is why chronic pain often persists in bodies that remain in vigilance, defensiveness, anticipation of harm. Not because the person is weak, but because their nervous system has not rested long enough to update the map. Attention is a double-edged sword. When attention is tightly focused on pain, sensory resolution increases. The map sharpens. Pain signals amplify. But when attention widens, not avoiding, not clinging, just gently aware, the brain receives a different message. Needed. Pain does not decrease because it is ignored. It decreases because it is no longer tracked as a threat. The most effective pain treatments today share one subtle principle. They change the meaning of sensation. For example, pain is no longer ongoing damage, but an old signal, not yet updated. When meaning changes, the brain adjusts its sensation. Response. Not because it is persuaded, but because risk is reassessed. Carl Jung never viewed persistent symptoms as enemies. He saw them as attempts at communication. In The Structure and Dynamics of the Psyche, he wrote, "Symptoms are often the attempt of the psyche to heal itself." From this perspective, pain is not something to extinguish immediately. It is a whisper about limits, about unmet needs, about an unconscious part not yet integrated. When the message is understood, the symptom no longer needs to shout. Safety does not mean no pain. Safety means being in a non-judgmental space, being allowed to feel without fixing, knowing the body does not need to prove anything. That is why gentle presence, slow voice, soft light, steady breathing can soften pain, even when tissue has not changed. Many people with chronic pain carry an invisible burden. If I don't control this, it will get worse. But the paradox is, the more control is attempted, the tighter the nervous system becomes. And the tighter it becomes, the more rigid the map grows. When control softens even slightly, the brain begins to allow new pathways. Sleep does not arrive by command. It arrives when attention loosens. The body is no longer monitored. The meaning of not sleeping is no longer threatening. Pain and insomnia share the same principle. They soften when they are no longer forced to disappear. You do not need to do anything to reduce pain. Just be here. Allow sensation to exist without naming it, without judging it. The map is updating. Very slowly, very gently. There is something rarely spoken yet profoundly important. The brain updates the body map best not when you try, but when you sleep. Sleep is not only rest. It is the nervous system's quiet repair workshop. When awake, the brain constantly scans. Danger, errors, abnormal signals. But in deep sleep, alarm systems lower. Not because danger disappears, but because evaluation pauses. And in that pause, the body map is redrawn more softly. In deep sleep, pain signals lose central priority. The brain no longer prioritizes urgent protection. Sensory memories are reorganized. Pain does not need to vanish immediately. It only needs to stop being the primary threat. And sometimes that shift in priority alone is enough to soften pain. A beautiful biological paradox. The brain needs to forget a little in order to relearn more accurately. Sleep allows overly tense connections to loosen, outdated maps to blur, old assumptions to be temporarily released, not through debate, not through reasoning, but through neural silence. Carl Jung saw sleep as a gateway where consciousness releases control and the unconscious is allowed to work. In The Symbolic Life, he wrote, "In sleep, consciousness retreats and the unconscious is given free rein. In that state, conflicts need not be solved. Sensations need not be fixed. Pain need not be explained. The unconscious simply reorganizes in its own way, slow, wordless, unforced. Because trying to sleep equals high attention. High attention equals vigilance. Vigilance equals old maps stay in place. Sleep arrives when no one is watching it, just like pain. Right now, you do not need to understand everything, remember everything, change anything. Your body learned how to update its maps long before you learned how to think. It only needs the right condition. And that condition is very simple, not being pushed. As you lie still, as the breath slows, the brain begins to believe there is nothing to do right now. The map is set down on the table. Rigid lines soften, tight pathways loosen. And in that quiet, the body begins to remember how to rest without pain. R. H. Wyetham, Sound and Connection. In the previous part, as the body map began to soften during sleep, we recognized something very important. The body does not self-regulate in isolation. Even when you are lying alone in a quiet room, your nervous system is still searching for something outside itself to synchronize with. And the oldest thing humans have searched for, before language, before logical thought, is rhythm. When your breath slows, your heart slows with it. But when you hear a steady rhythm, whether it is the sound of rain, the wind, or a very simple melody, your brain begins to do something else. It does not only regulate from within, it also regulates by joining what is outside. This is not a metaphor. This is physiology. Many studies show that heart rate can synchronize with sound rhythms. Breathing naturally slows to steady patterns. Brainwaves shift toward lower frequencies with repetitive sounds. The human body is designed to entrain. In nature, absolute silence is rarely a sign of safety. Instead, familiar repetitive sounds signal this: you are not alone. Nothing unusual is happening. Night insects, ocean waves, wind in the forest. They tell no story. They simply repeat. And it is this repetition that calms the nervous system. When humans sing together in ancient rituals, lullabies, or sacred chants, what matters is not the beauty of the melody, but this breathing synchronizes. Heart rhythms draw closer. Individual nervous systems briefly lower their guard. Body understands. If many bodies share one rhythm, danger will to be detected sooner. Safety biologically is a collective experience. Carl Gustav Jung believed that humans do not only have a personal unconscious, but are connected through a deeper layer, the collective unconscious. In The Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious, he wrote, "The collective unconscious is identical in all men, and thus constitutes a common psychic substrate. Rhythm, sound, ritual are ancient doorways into that shared layer. No understanding required, no analysis needed, only participation." Something very subtle happens when you hear familiar sounds. The brain no longer tracks every detail. Attention is allowed to loosen. The body shifts from self-control to being guided. Sound is no longer stimulation. It becomes support, like a hand placed gently at your back, not pushing, not pulling, just there. We often think, "I must calm myself." But biology whispers something else. You are allowed to borrow the rhythm of the world to calm yourself. You do not need to create safety. You only need to sense that it is already present. Right now, whether you are listening closely to this voice or letting it drift, your body is already in training, softening, merging into a slower current. No need to try to sleep. No need to understand. Just let the steady rhythm do its work. Habits, beliefs, and structure. From shared rhythm, from the feeling of regulation without effort, we move into an even deeper layer of safety structure. If rhythm is the river, structure is the riverbank. It does not force the water to flow, but gives it enough direction to prevent overflow, to prevent panic. And the human brain loves riverbanks like this. The brain seeks predictability. We often believe we crave freedom, but at a deeper biological level, the brain seeks something else: familiarity. Not because it is lazy, but because familiarity means safety, a known script, a repeated sequence, a ritual that requires no thinking. These reduce prediction, cost, reduce vigilance, reduce the question, what happens next? And when that question settles, the body begins to rest. A ritual does not need to be sacred. It only needs to repeat. A sip of water before bed, turning off lights in the same order, hearing the same familiar voice, lying down in the same position. Rituals tell the nervous system there is nothing new to solve. You have been here before, and so the brain stops guarding. Not whether it is true, but whether it soothes. From a purely scientific perspective, many beliefs might be called superstition, but biology does not ask whether a belief is true or false. It asks only one question: does this belief stabilize the nervous system? If the answer is yes, the body uses it. That is why a lucky object, a prayer, a familiar symbol can slow the heart, deepen the breath, and soften muscles. No explanation needed, no proof required. Carl Gustav Jung wrote in Man and His Symbols, "Symbols are natural attempts to reconcile and reunite the opposites within us. Rituals, habits, beliefs are not just repeated actions. They are living symbols. Symbols of order, symbols of continuity, symbols that say everything is in its place. When symbols appear, consciousness no longer needs to strain for control. The unconscious takes over the rest. The brain does not need to control everything. It only needs the sense that some frame is holding things together. Habits provide that frame, even very small ones. The same bedtime, the same familiar sound, the same closing sequence of the day. This sense of control does not make you rigid. It allows you to relax. Because when there is a frame, you no longer need to hold everything by force. When habits are maintained, cortisol gradually decreases. The parasympathetic system activates more. Circadian rhythms become more predictable. The body begins to believe that tonight is like other safe nights before. And that belief does not live in thought, but in cells. At some point, you may notice you are no longer performing the ritual. You are simply drifting into it, like a child who does not need to understand the lullaby, only to hear it. If tonight you are listening to this voice within a familiar sequence, that sequence itself is already doing its work. No effort required. Just stay within the frame. Emotions, written into the body when the body speaks. What? The mind does not need to say. From familiar structures, from rituals that calm consciousness, we step deeper into a place where emotion is no longer thought, but physiology. Here there is no clear boundary between I feel and my body reacts. They are one. You blush before you understand embarrassment. Your heart flutters before you name fear. Your mouth dries before your mind registers anxiety. The body does not wait for analysis. It responds directly to meaning. Not logical meaning, but social meaning, survival meaning, emotional meaning. They live in relationship, a glance, a silence, a subtle change in tone. Your body reads them all. Not because you are weak, but because you are a social being. Your nervous system evolved to respond to acceptance and the risk of exclusion faster than conscious thought. Carl Gustav Jung wrote in, "The archetypes and the collective unconscious emotion is the chief source of all becoming conscious. Emotion is the doorway, not reason. And when that doorway opens, it opens into the body first. Blushing is not a flaw. It is an evolutionary trace. It tells the group, I recognize a boundary was crossed. I wish to maintain connection. No apology needed. No explanation required. Blood flows automatically to the skin. The body speaks for you. When you startle, it is not because you are too sensitive. It is because your nervous system still carries thousands of years of memory that required reacting faster than thought. A sound, a sudden movement. The body chooses safety before asking why. When anxious, saliva production decreases, not by chance. In vigilance, digestion is not a priority. Energy shifts toward preparation. The body does not care what exactly you are worried about. It receives only one message. Something requires attention. They need to be acknowledged. One of the greatest misunderstandings is believing we must control emotions. Biology does not work that way. Emotions soften when they are allowed to exist without resistance. When you do not push away blushing, it fades more quickly. When you do not fear the startle, the nervous system rebalances itself. In Jungian psychology, the body is not merely matter. It is a living symbol of unconscious impulses. When the body reacts, the unconscious is speaking without language. If tonight you notice a slightly faster heartbeat, a heaviness in the chest, a belly not fully relaxed, that is not a problem. It is simply the body completing an emotional cycle. You do not need to fix it. You do not need to push it away. Only allow it. You do not need to understand why the body responds this way. The body already knows. It only needs you not to interrupt its self-regulation. When emotion is acknowledged without judgment, something very natural happens. The nervous system begins to slow. And from here, we step into an experience many people know but few truly understand. Panic and sensory perception when the body is misunderstood and fear creates itself. After moving through emotion, after understanding that the body has its own language, with reactions that do not ask permission from consciousness, we arrive at an experience many have known, but few have been guided through. Gently. Panic. Panic is not weakness, not losing control, not a sign of real danger. In most cases, panic arises when the body is misunderstood. A normal physiological signal, a faster heartbeat, shallower breath, warmth, tingling, lightheadedness, is given the wrong meaning by consciousness. And from that moment a loop begins. The body sends a signal. Consciousness interprets it. Interpretation creates fear. Fear reactivates the body. Not because the original signal was dangerous, but because of the meaning assigned to it. In scientific language, this is a distortion of sensory perception. In Jungian language, it is when consciousness fails to understand the message of the unconscious and responds with fear. Carl Gustav Jung wrote in Psychology and Alchemy, "What you do not make conscious appears in your life as fate. What is not understood, not named, not accepted returns as an overwhelming force." Panic in this sense is not an enemy but a message misunderstood. What must be whispered gently is this: during panic, the body is not about to shut down, not about to faint, not about to lose sanity. The body is simply activating an old protective program in an outdated context. Many people try to push panic away, and the more they push, the stronger it becomes, because the nervous system reads resistance as danger. The opposite path is the calming one. Observation is not control. Observation is simply noticing. The heart is beating fast. The breath is shallow. There is warmth in the chest. No added story, no prediction, just data passing through. When sensation is named, it loses some of its power. Names do not imprison, they orient. This is the hardest step, and also the gentlest. Allowing is not liking. Allowing is not surrender. Allowing is simply ending the fight. When inner conflict ends, the nervous system begins to regulate itself. The sensation does not vanish instantly, but meaning changes first. And when meaning changes, physiological escalation has no reason to continue. Panic is not defeated. It dissolves when it is no longer misunderstood. In Jungian psychology, intense moments are often thresholds of transformation, not to be crossed with force, but entered with awareness. Panic does not ask you to be stronger. It asks, can you listen without judgment? If tonight you feel a hint of unease when closing your eyes, if your body sends unfamiliar signals, this does not mean sleep will be difficult. It simply means the nervous system is completing a cycle. You do not need to rush it. You do not need to fix it. Only allow rhythm to appear. You do not need certainty that everything is fine. Your body has known how to stabilize itself long before you were born. It only needs you not to fear it. When panic is seen clearly, something very natural happens. Rhythm returns. And in the next part, we move into an element that regulates deeply without words. Movement, endorphins, and meaning when the body remembers. How to soothe itself. After panic is no longer seen as an enemy. After we understand that many intense reactions are simply misunderstood signals, the body begins to return to a more familiar path. Older, quieter, and less verbal. Movement. Not movement for achievement. Not movement for self-improvement, but movement as a way for the nervous system to exhale. Long before humans had words for emotion, before concepts like stress or anxiety, the body already knew something simple. When energy is trapped, it must move through. Running, walking, stretching, swaying. not to become stronger but to return to balance. When the body moves gently, it releases endorphins, small molecules carrying a powerful message: you are safe. Endorphins do not erase problems. They do not delete memory, but they soften how the body reacts to the world. Pain feels less sharp, heavy emotions gain space, and the mind no longer has to strain to guard. Alongside endorphins, movement activates BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, often called fertilizer for the brain. BDNF does not make you better instantly, but it helps the brain relearn responses, form new connections, loosen old ruts. A flexible brain needs less defense. Here, something must be said very softly. Not all movement heals. Movement driven by force can become another form of stress. But movement that comes from listening, from asking the body, what do you need right now, has an entirely different quality. Carl Gustav Jung emphasized that the psyche does not live only in thought, but is embodied in the whole living person. In The Structure and Dynamics of the Psyche, he wrote, "The psyche is not of today. Its ancestry goes back many millions of years. The mind carries evolutionary memory, and movement is part of that memory. When we move, we are not only moving muscles, we are awakening an ancient intelligence that already knows how to regulate itself. Intensity is not what determines benefit. Meaning is. The same movement, when tied to a meaningful intention, even a very small one, feels lighter. Walking to be healthy is different from walking to feel night air. Stretching to fix pain is different from stretching to say to the body, I'm listening. Meaning here is not lofty ideals, not long-term goals. Sometimes meaning is simply, I'm doing this to breathe easier. I'm allowing myself to slow down. I'm in my body, not just my head. When meaning appears, the body stops resisting. In many ancient cultures, movement was always paired with ritual. Walking meditation, slow dance, rhythmic labor, fire circle ceremonies, not for entertainment, but for inner regulation. Rhythmic movement creates a sense of order, and order is the strongest biological signal of safety. Before sleep, the body does not need to be exhausted. It only needs to complete the day's energy cycle. A little gentle movement, stretching, slow walking, rolling shoulders, breathing with motion can be enough to tell the nervous system, today is complete. You do not need to know how much endorphin is released. You do not need to measure BDNF. You do not need to optimize. The body knows its work better than any instruction. You only need to stay with it in that small movement. If you are lying still right now, perhaps just one deep breath and one tiny movement is enough, not to achieve anything, only to feel that you are here. The body is here, and it remembers how to soothe itself. When movement has calmed the nervous system, something else begins to appear naturally. The biological rhythm returns to order, and in the next part, we step into a space very close to sleep. Nature light and sleep, when the body reads the world as a lullaby. After movement, after the energy of the day has been allowed to pass through the body, something very natural begins to happen. Not loudly, not suddenly. The body begins to return to the rhythm of night, not because you command it to sleep, but because the surrounding environment is quietly whispering that everything is safe. In the previous part, we spoke of movement as a way for the nervous system to complete the tension release cycle of a day. And when that cycle closes, the body begins to seek its opposite, stillness. But stillness does not come from force. It arrives when the environment no longer sends signals of vigilance. One of the greatest misunderstandings about sleep is this: you have to be exhausted in order to sleep. In truth, the body sleeps deeply, not when it is depleted, but when it senses sustained safety. Safety is not merely the absence of danger. It is the absence of the need to remain on guard. Across hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, the human nervous system has been programmed to read nature as a survival map. Daylight, time for activity. Dusk, preparation for rest. Stable darkness, sleep. Nature does not speak in words. It speaks in rhythm, and the human body understands this language more deeply than any reminder. Daylight is not only for seeing clearly, it is a signal that sets the timing for the entire biological system. When the eyes receive natural daylight during the day, the brain registers this is day. And when night arrives, that biological memory allows melatonin to be released at the right time. Not because you want to sleep, but because the body knows that it is night. Carl Jung once wrote in The Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious, "The unconscious is not just evil by nature, it is also the source of the highest good." In the Jungian view, darkness is not the enemy of consciousness. It is the space where the mind is relieved of the need to understand and to control. Night and the gentle light of night is an invitation to return to the unconscious safely. Rumination, the repetition of thoughts, does not occur because the mind is bad. It happens because the mind is trying to resolve something in order to ensure safety. But when the surrounding environment softens, gentle light, steady sound, stable temperature, the mind recognizes that there is nothing requiring immediate resolution, and it lets go. A warm evening bath is not only hygiene, it is an ancient biological ritual. Body temperature rises slightly, then gradually falls, sending the signal the day has ended. The sensation of warm water on the skin is one of the strongest safety signals for the nervous system. No thinking required. No understanding required, only being held. The most important message of this section is this: you do not need to convince your body to sleep. The body does not sleep by command, it sleeps by context. The environment is the broadcast. The body is constantly reading light, temperature, rhythm, familiarity. When that broadcast says, "Everything is okay, no need to guard sleep," arrives on its own. The body does not require perfection. It only requires repetition that feels safe. A familiar room, a familiar light, a familiar breath. This is why bedtime rituals work better than any trick. Jung once wrote in Modern Man in Search of a Soul, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Sleep is not an escape from darkness. It is allowing darkness to do the work it knows how to do. When willpower stops issuing commands, the unconscious begins to organize. If you are listening now, you do not need to remember anything. You do not need to remember how light works. You do not need to remember what melatonin is. You do not need to remember what Jung said. You only need to let your body be in this environment, this voice, this breath, this moment. Outside, the earth continues to turn. Light exists somewhere else. Plants continue to breathe, and there is nothing you need to do right now. Your body knows how to sleep better than any thought. You do not need to try, you only need to allow. And when nature, light, and environment have done their work, only one very gentle thing remains: surrendering into order, when nothing more is required, when the light has softened, when the breath has slowed, when the body has received enough signals that there is no danger to respond to. There is nowhere else to go, only a place to stay. Not to stay in thought, but to be supported by an order that already exists. In the previous part, we allowed nature, light, and environment to do their work. No analysis, no remembering, only recognizing one gentle truth: the human body is born to sleep. Sleep is not a skill to be learned. It is an ancient reflex, activated when willpower stops commanding. The mind influences the body. The body responds to the mind. No one leads, no one follows. They whisper to each other through hormones, breath sensation, vague memory that you do not need to name. Carl Jung wrote in The Structure and Dynamics of the Psyche, "The psyche is a self-regulating system that maintains its equilibrium just as the body does. The mind, like the body, always seeks balance, not through force, but through self-regulation. All day, willpower has worked hard, deciding, controlling, analyzing. Reminding willpower is like a devoted gatekeeper, but if the gatekeeper never leaves the post, the system grows exhausted. Sleep arrives when the gatekeeper is allowed to sit down. In Jungian language, surrender is not giving up. It is trusting a deeper order. Carl Jung once wrote in Memories, Dreams, Reflections, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." But becoming does not require effort at every moment. Some processes only happen when we stop interfering. Sleep is the territory of the unconscious. Not a chaotic unconscious, but one that knows how to arrange, how to reconnect the fragments of a day. Like a forest at night, like a body in stillness. No bright light needed, no instructions required. If you are still listening now, you may have forgotten many things said earlier, and that is perfectly fine. You do not need to remember placebo nerves, the unconscious. Jung's sleep does not require memory. It only requires permission. When you slow down, the heart does not need to race. When you slow down, the breath finds depth on its own. When you slow down, the whole system understands there is nothing that needs to be done right now. And when you are no longer in a hurry, the system stops hurrying as well. The deeper order of the world does not make loud sounds. It does not need your attention in order to exist. The heart keeps beating. The brain continues organizing memory. The body continues healing itself. You do not need to guard these processes. Carl Jung once wrote, "The creation of something new is not accomplished by the intellect, but by the play instinct." Sleep is the same. It does not come from intellect. It comes from the nervous system playing gently with biological rhythm. When the ego steps back, life continues. If your eyelids feel heavy now, it is not because you have listened enough. It is because your body has received enough signals of safety. If thoughts are still drifting, do not chase them. Do not stop them. Let them move like night clouds. There is no test after sleep, nothing you need to prove. The world will continue to function whether you are awake or asleep. And tonight, you are allowed to stop guarding the world. Mind and body are not separate. They whisper to each other every moment in a language that does not require understanding. And when you allow yourself to slow, the entire system slows with you. No effort needed, nothing to complete, only surrender into the order that already exists. Willpower is not force, the strength of permission, when you no longer need to be strong. And when the previous section closed with surrender, a very gentle question may arise in the silence. If willpower is not used to control, then what is willpower really? The answer does not come as an argument, but as a familiar sensation in the body. Willpower has been misunderstood for too long. For a long time, people have been taught that willpower means trying harder, enduring longer, never being weak, never stopping. Willpower became associated with tension, clenched teeth, and a splash. Body always in the state of having to do something. But when we look more deeply through biology, neuroscience, and the lens of Carl Jung, we begin to see something else. Many biological responses only change when we stop forcing them to change. The body does not learn well under force. The nervous system is not a machine. It is a vigilant organism. When forced, the heart does not slow. The breath does not deepen. Sleep does not come. But when permission is given, protective reflexes soften. The parasympathetic system activates. The body self-regulates without command. Carl Jung wrote in The Relations Between the Ego and the Unconscious, what you resist persists. What we fight does not disappear, it simply changes form, quieter, deeper. Permission is not giving up. Permission is not neglect, not quitting, not weakness. Permission is the absence of opposition. When an uncomfortable sensation appears, old willpower says, "Don't feel this." Deeper willpower whispers, "I see you." And in that moment, the nervous system begins to regulate itself. The nervous system is self-balancing, like body temperature, like heart rate during sleep. No one commands the heart to slow. No one orders the body to heal. The body does these things when it no longer feels threatened. Threat does not only come from outside. It also comes from internal pressure. Jung and unconscious. Will Jung clearly distinguished between the will of the ego and the energy flow of the unconscious. When the ego tries to control everything, life energy becomes blocked. Jung wrote in Modern Man in Search of a Soul, "The unconscious is not just evil by nature, it is also the source of the highest good. The unconscious is not something to dominate. It contains ancient biological wisdom, and it functions best when listened to, not commanded. Deep willpower is timely permission. Deep willpower does not say I must be stronger. It says I can stop here. It does not demand I must sleep now. It opens a door. If sleep comes, I am ready." And the paradox is this: when we stop trying to sleep, sleep often arrives, directly to you, the listener. If you are still awake right now, it does not mean you are doing something wrong. If thoughts are still moving, it does not mean you have failed. Try not changing anything. Allow the body to be exactly as it is. Quiet strength. The strength spoken of here does not make noise. It does not need proof. No achievement, no victory. It feels like a muscle softening after a long day, a breath that is not corrected, a night that does not need to be successful. When you allow, willpower does not disappear. Willpower does not vanish when we allow. It changes form. From commander, it becomes a gentle gatekeeper. From command, it becomes trust, a very soft lullaby at the end. You do not need to force yourself to be strong tonight. No need to become a better version of yourself. Only allow the body to do what it has known how to do for a very long time. Breathe slowly and let everything arrange itself. True strength sometimes is not moving forward but not resisting this moment. And when you allow, the body will know what to do next. Willpower and the unconscious, when you no longer need to control everything. And when willpower no longer strains to force outcomes, when permission opens a quiet space, we touch an even deeper layer of being, not the layer of effort, not the layer of determination, but the layer of the unconscious. Conscious will is only the surface. Carl Jung never saw conscious will as the absolute center of psychological life. He repeatedly reminded us that what we call "I am deciding" is only a thin surface floating atop a vast ocean. In The Structure and Dynamics of the Psyche, he wrote, "The conscious mind is only a small part of the psyche. Most of what we do, feel, and react to is guided by processes beyond direct conscious control. The unconscious is not the enemy." In modern life, the unconscious is often seen as chaotic, impulsive, dangerous, something to be controlled. But for Jung, the unconscious is not the enemy of will. It is the source of life energy. He wrote in Modern Man in Search of a Soul, "The unconscious is not just evil by nature, it is also the source of the highest good." The unconscious holds survival instincts, ancient biological wisdom, rhythms learned before language existed. When consciousness tries to control the unconscious, much human exhaustion does not come from the outside world, but from media. Internal conflict. Consciousness wants to sleep, to be calm, to be strong. The unconscious wants safety, to be heard, to operate at its own rhythm. When these pull in opposite directions, energy is quietly drained. Cooperation instead of control. Jung did not advocate letting the unconscious take over completely. He spoke of cooperation. In Psychological Types, he wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. But making the unconscious conscious is not controlling it. It is recognizing, accepting, and cooperating." Deep willpower listens. Deep willpower does not command the body. It asks softly, what does the body need right now? And then it waits. In that waiting, biological rhythm reorganizes itself. The direct connection to sleep. Sleep is an unconscious process. No one does sleep. You can only create conditions, create safety, and let the unconscious do the rest. Trying to sleep with willpower only activates consciousness more strongly. The emotional tone of this section. If there is one feeling planted here, it is relief. You do not need to fully understand yourself. You do not need to control every thought. You do not need to fix every sensation. Only trust that beneath tired consciousness, there is a deeper intelligence that has kept you alive for a very long time. The body knows more than thought. The body knows when to rest, when to tense, when to release. And the unconscious is the language the body uses to speak to you. A final soft lullaby. You do not need to control everything tonight. No need to understand every thought. If something within you is working quietly, let it work. No need to monitor. No need to supervise. When consciousness releases the wheel and the unconscious's trusted life energy begins to flow again, and in that flow there is a very familiar place you are returning to. Sleep. Sleep is not an achievement when willpower stops. Commanding sleep finds its own way. And when consciousness grows tired from trying to understand, when the unconscious is trusted to move at its own pace, we touch a very simple truth, one that is often forgotten. Sleep is not something to achieve. Not a goal, not a skill, not a task to complete before the night ends. When people try to sleep hard enough, many people enter bed with the same daytime posture, effort, control, forcing results. They treat sleep as a task. I must sleep. If I don't sleep, tomorrow will be terrible. Why am I still awake? And with each question, consciousness lights up. The nervous system tightens. The body receives a clear message. Something is not safe. Sleep does not arrive when called. Sleep does not respond to commands. It does not arrive because it is forced. It does not appear because determination is strong enough. Sleep arrives when no one is guarding. Carl Jung wrote in The Undiscovered Self, man's task is not to become perfect, but to become whole. And wholeness includes the ability to let go of control. The body has known how to sleep for a very long time. Before you learned how to think, your body already knew how to sleep. Before language existed, before the concept of insomnia, the body already knew when to dim the senses, when to enter recovery rhythm, when to release. Sleep is an ancient biological program that does not require conscious control. Willpower often interrupts. Sleep willpower is essential during the day planning, acting, overcoming obstacles. But at night, willpower often becomes a guest who arrives too late. When willpower remains active, the brain stays in evaluation mode. Right, wrong, gain, loss, success, failure. Sleep arrives only when these scales are set aside. Sleep is not a reward. Many people unconsciously treat sleep as a reward. When I finish everything, I can sleep. When I stop worrying, I'll sleep. But biology does not operate on morality. The body does not wait for you to deserve rest. Sleep does not require you to be better. It only requires less interference. Permission, the final act of willpower. Here lies a beautiful paradox. The final act of willpower is deciding not to act. When you quietly say to yourself, I don't need to sleep. If sleep comes, that's fine. If not yet, that's okay too. The nervous system hears this as a signal of safety. And when safety appears, sleep often follows. Sleep is a return to the unconscious. For Jung, sleep is not only biological, it is the natural return of consciousness into the unconscious. By day, we live on the surface. By night, we are allowed to sink. Not to do anything, only to be. A very soft lullaby. No analysis. You do not need to try to sleep tonight. No need to track each breath. No need to check whether you are sleepy yet. If your eyelids feel heavy, let them be heavy. If thoughts drift, let them drift. Nothing needs fixing. The body is the best guardian of sleep. The body knows when it has had enough, when it feels safe, when it can release. You do not need to remind it. You only need not to block the path. Sleep is not a victory, not a failure. not something to do correctly. Sleep is what happens when no one is trying. And tonight, you do not need to use willpower to sleep. You only need to allow the body to do what it has known how to do for a very long time. And now, after walking together through many layers of mind and body, through stories of willpower, perception, belief, emotion, breath, rhythm, and release, perhaps the most important thing is not remembering any concept. No need to hold definitions. No need to organize knowledge. No need to ask, did I understand enough? Because sleep does not come from understanding. It comes from permission. There is a gentle truth that modern science, depth psychology, and lived experience all agree on. The body and mind are not separate. They whisper to each other constantly through tiny signals. A tense thought can quicken the heart. A feeling of safety can slow the breath. An old memory can tighten the body. And a gentle release can open the door to sleep. No effort required. No fighting. No self-conquest. Carl Jung once said that humans do not need to become perfect, but whole. And wholeness includes accepting moments when control is not possible, when willpower steps aside so a deeper, slower, more ancient intelligence can speak. Sleep is one of those moments. When you lie down, do not force the body to relax. Do not command the mind to be silent. Only recognize this. Your body has known how to rest for a very long time, before you learned how to worry, before you learned how to try. Every cell carries the memory of recovery. Every heartbeat knows how to slow when not pushed. Every breath can deepen when not watched. If thoughts still pass through, that is okay. Thoughts are not the enemy of sleep. They are just the last clouds of the day drifting across a tired sky. You do not need to chase them. You do not need to follow them. Just let them pass as if you are lying, listening to distant rain without counting the drops. Sleep is not a state you must reach. It is a process that unfolds when you stop searching. There is no right time, no correct way, no test waiting for you. Only a very gentle invitation. Can you release just a little more? Release the shoulders. Release the jaw. Release the thought that you must do something correctly. Remember that right now, as you listen, the world continues to function quietly and steadily. Your heart is beating. Your lungs are exchanging air. Your body is regulating temperature, hormones, rhythm. No intervention needed. No supervision required. Sleep is the same. Perhaps tonight sleep will come quickly. Perhaps it will arrive more slowly. Both are okay. You have not failed if you are still awake. You have not won if you fall asleep. You are simply living according to your rhythm in a very human, very real moment. If there is one thing worth carrying forward, it may be this: you do not need willpower to sleep. You only need to allow the body to do what it already knows. Nothing more, nothing less. And now there is nothing left to think about, nothing left to solve. If your eyelids grow heavy, let them close. If your breath slows, let it slow. If sleep comes, let it come like an old friend, no introduction, no explanation. Good night. May your sleep be deep, gentle, and complete in your own way. And if you do not fall asleep immediately, that is perfectly fine too. Your body is listening, and it will know when the moment is right to rest. Sleep well.